Now I would like to invite Dr.Sutirtha Sahariah ji. Dr.Sutirtha Sahariah ji is an independent researcher and development communications consultant. He has a PhD in International Development from the University of Portsmouth, England, and a Media Management degree from the University of Stirling, Scotland. He is specializing in survival leadership, human trafficking, gender violence, and sustainable supply chains. Mr. Suti has been doing research on modern slavery projects across South Asia, and he is also working as an independent, he's reporting independently on broader issues as a journalist. And he has his stories featured in The Guardian, BBC, The News Deeply, The Huffington Post, etc. And he's a regional consultant for the Modern Slavery and Human Rights Policy and Evidence Center, University of Liverpool. So much to actually share about you. Please, we welcome you on stage, Dr.Sutirtha Sahariah ji. What about those who are sitting behind? आपकी आवाज़ क्यों नहीं आ रही है यहाँ पे? You are not excited to hear. जोर से आवाज़ आनी चाहिए डालो. No, आपका आगे आवाज़ नहीं है.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's actually quite an honor to be in front of such a stellar group of speakers who are present here today. Now, based on my introduction, I worked in the development and communication space, and I've been doing that for over 15 years now. Initially as a journalist. Before that I was in public relations in the UK for a firm called Bill Pottinger. So that was doing a lot of reputation management for governments around the world. And then I went on to do research in a very different area, and the research interest came from my journalism background, because when I was posted as a journalist, I piggybacked on BBC and then came to Delhi, and the type of issues that were given to me were very difficult. Human trafficking, for example, which now we call it modern slavery, Sustainable Development Goal 8.6. So basically I work in Sustainable Development Goals, and we try to combine three things. A good research. For any business to grow, any business to do well, you have to have a very strong research foundations, that's the key. Research informs storytelling. A good storytelling, the way you narrate your stories, the way you connect with your customers, or you kind of engage in diplomacy, it's about good storytelling. And then comes the third point, public relations. How you project yourself to the world. What are your strengths, your capabilities, and even sometimes your weakness. And when you talk about development, when it comes to India, India itself is a country of a continental size. So our narratives are very different. So one of the things that we are trying to do through our communication and research is to also kind of challenge, if not challenge, to engage with the Western policymakers. For example, yesterday the Prime Minister, while speaking to the labor ministers around the world, he mentioned about Sustainable Development Goals, but he also said that the focus or the definition of SDGs is a bit narrow. It kind of does not encompass a lot of good things that's happening, for example, in India. Social welfare, pension, health. So that definition needs to be broadened. So one of the things that we do is to, when we deal with international policymakers, most of them are from the West. They do not necessarily get things right when it comes to our country. For example, I was in the UK just last week, and there was this massive seminar on modern slavery. They talked about survivor engagement in policy and programs. Now their thinking of survivor engagement in policy and programs is very different. But I went to some of the areas in Sundarban, and I could see some grassroots initiatives and entrepreneurship. For example, our welfare system is so good. It's pretty good on the ground. Like for example, when a victim of human trafficking comes back, the rehabilitation process is pretty good. There are systems. If you need help, the Indian Constitution guarantees you few things. The right to live, right to shelter, right to food. We have community-based organization that does the job. They kind of go house to house. They work with survivors and make them leaders. The problem is that there's a lack of funds. For example, in Sundarban area, and you'd be surprised to know almost 2,000 girls are trafficked every year. Is there scope for business there? There is. For example, aquaculture, fishing. I met a fish entrepreneur there. All you need is an investment of 10,000 pounds, 10,000 rupees. 10,000 pounds, probably 10,000 lakhs. sorry, I don't get the figures, it's 10 lakhs. So if you invest 10 lakhs, you can actually employ women who don't have to migrate them, they can do their job in their own area. But these type of entrepreneurial ideas is something that we are working on to create jobs at the very local level, using local resources so that people don't migrate. When you talk about modern slavery, the problem is with migration, there are no jobs. So if there are no jobs, obviously when you go through that channel, you're bound to, because you're a vulnerable person. And that's how it kind of recycles, one thing leads to another. But India is in a position to solve its own problems really. And we have a lot of capacities, and it's just that our systems are there. There are enormous policies, good ones. It's just that they need to be fine-tuned. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much, and it's been an honor listening to others.